runs through the hallway.
All right, so we're reconvening after closed session, and we have a report out. During closed session, item PE 2122-1 was approved 5-0. And item PE 2122-2 was also approved 5-0. And then the board voted 5-0 to approve a settlement agreement for internal case number AL 2021-1 on terms involving a total of $7,000. Right. So now, next on our agenda is our patriotic exercise. So we're so happy to have Claire Wilson here. Yeah, let's lower the mic.
I'm short. Hello, my name is Sherwood. I'm a fifth student at Miss Edits class in Lincoln Elementary. I am honored to represent Lincoln in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would you like to take a picture with the phone?
Oh, okay.
Say yes, say yes. Back here.
You ready?
Got it.
1, 2, 3. Let's just do one more. In case you guys know. 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice job.
Our first in-person patriotic exercise. Sitting to like in the light.
Right.
Okay, so let's now move on to our roll call. Trustee Wong. Oh,
Just think.
okay, so trustee Wong. Here. Trustee Reed. Here. Trustee Sarkondo.
Here.
Trustee Mudd. Here. And trustee Kimball here. Great. Do we have a motion to approve our agenda for tonight?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda today.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we're looking at the minutes from September 14, 2021. Do we have a motion to approve that? Great. Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. So now we have the discussion about public statements related to the agenda items, and I'm going to read aloud how public statements work in our meeting. At the discretion of the Board of Trustees, the public may address the board on non-agenda topics and/or agenda items. If you choose to make a public statement, you must be present at the meeting and complete the blue request to address the Board of Trustees form. Okay, there's a form back there. Please note that comments are limited to 3 minutes. The board president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. If your comment is on an item that is not on the agenda, then you will be asked to speak during the public statements related to non-agenda topics at the end of the meeting. If your comment is on an item that is on the agenda, then you'll be called upon to speak at the time of the agenda item. Right. So now we have our public statements. The first one up is the union statement. Do we have the union representative? You'll have to bring the microphone back.
Yeah, I think that. Oh, I don't. Or I could just sit down.
Thank you, trustee.
Thank you so much. Okay. So I off I go. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Heather McLean, and I'm a 7th grade humanities teacher at VIS. First, a shout out to my amazing, resilient, hardworking coworkers, and for my wonderful coworkers that are here. I am so fortunate to work with this remarkable and entertaining crew. I would also like to give a warm welcome to our new principal, Erica Gilbert. We have welcomed her with open arms and are so appreciative of all her kind and supportive words and actions toward the staff. We feel heard and appreciated. Erica has been out, and I see this from my window on the second floor, on the quad, greeting kids, scooting them to class, and picking up their garbage. Not to overlook our amazing APs. Dave Moore and Jermaine Williams are out there and working tirelessly to keep BIS on track. We appreciate you. I will give you a snapshot of where we are as a staff. Our 7th grade humanities teacher is all new to humanities. Unfortunately for us, all of last year's 7th grade humanities teachers were part of the 25% of the teachers who left the district. I'm really enjoying this new teaching assignment, but with the new crew and the new curriculum, we are, needless to say, working a lot and still doing our best. A big thank you to the 6th and 8th grade humanities teachers for their advice and wisdom. Adding to this is a continued lack of subs. We at BIS have been subbing approximately twice a week. And as we have 4 preps a week, this translates to 50% less prep time. The impact has caused much stress and anxiety amongst the staff. The feeling is one of being on a treadmill with no slow down button. Troubling too is that one of our counselors is only on the BIS campus once a week. This is a rough year to make that change. I personally have a number of students that have mental health issues, and I would love to be able to send them to an on-campus counselor for some much needed one-on-one help. To put this into further perspective, this counselor is stretched thin at 3 different sites. This leaves the other BIS counselor with a much bigger caseload. State recommendation, it averages 250 students to 1 counselor. At BIS alone, there are over 1,100 students. San Mateo Foster City School District has 3 counselors at each of the schools. Last spring, I reached out to all board members to ask if they would like to meet with the BEA reps to discuss issues at hand and to get our input. I did this for a number of reasons, but a primary reason was that a board member that was at a board meeting last spring, a board member stated that she had many questions to ask the superintendent in order to get a thorough understanding of the budget. And I thought, why no questions for us? We are a delightful company and pretty darn well informed. No board member asked to meet. This struck me not as a thorough way to get all sides of not only this issue, but any issue. Our current impasse situation is a serious one. And as decision makers, the board ought to clearly and thoroughly examine all sides and be cognizant of the fact that they are the governing body. Our schools are staffed with the most remarkable, devoted, intelligent teachers, staff, and administrators. But we won't be if we see another 25% of our teachers leave this year. Combining our attrition rate and our district's comparatively low salaries and the ongoing teacher shortage leaves a very troubling picture. Thank you very much for your time.
Next, we have a statement from the principal.
Good evening. I wanted to begin by thanking Claire for leading our patriotic exercises. One of our first in-person students, I shared with her in about almost 2 years. Claire, you did a wonderful job. There's quite a bit to share about. October is an amazing month. We have been working on our safety plans with the great shakeout coming. So we've already, our Lincoln team has gotten out there. We've done our evacuation drills and the kids did a beautiful job. We're trying to celebrate and bring resources into the classroom for Latinx Heritage Month, Filipino Heritage Month, LGBTQ+ History Month. In addition to all the other fall celebrations. And if you're wondering how we know, a group of kindergartners on the way to music class the other day, one said to the other, it's fall. And the other's like, how do you know? And the little one pointed, she's like, look at all the decorations. That is how we know. So we know by their coming and going each day that they're really feeling the season. And that is so special. That is such a special thing, especially for me. Yes, only yesterday, goes quickly, we had our mental health professional development morning. We looked at strategies to support student behaviors. We looked at our tools and resources, which I have to say, I have been a part of things for many years here as we've been building our tiers out, and our tools and resources are so well developed and evolved over time. I'm just so grateful for the support and the knowledge that we have available to us through our mental health team. Michelle Holt was available to do mindfulness activities, which was really incredible and thoughtful and gave all of us time to pause and think about our students and also ourselves, which I thought was so important. We were reminded of important things with second step. Kimochis are coming to our little ones' classrooms, which are really fun. If you don't know about kimochis, they're adorable. And my little one has benefited from it a great deal and being able to name emotions and what they're feeling. A teacher said to me at the end of the day yesterday, my takeaway, Laura, is that we need to have grace for our students and for ourselves. And I just thought that was so powerful, and that really speaks to the work that our mental health team is doing. And then also Dom Yang got to present on LGBTQ+ resources and support, which I thought is just wonderful, and we're continuing to show support to our students and families. I looked at the team standing before us yesterday, and with so many of them, I could think of a time when they had come alongside me or alongside a teacher in a really hard time when a student needed them very, very much. And I was so grateful for each individual that stood there before us, because they do some of the most important work of helping our students and guiding us as teachers and principals there with our students day in, day out. And so I'm so thankful for our team. Our teachers are busy building community. We are getting going on our classroom mascots. We have the cheerful chickens at Lincoln, and our kindergartners have a little turtle that keeps disappearing because it's loved so much. He takes unexpected trips out of the classroom, and then we find him and bring him back. We're working on taking all of our assessment, which our teachers have done a wealth of with their new adoptions. They're doing a lot of assessment work and already applying it to their instruction. Our music team, Doug Simon is I don't know if I play guitar, so tuning strings, especially nylon strings, takes a long time, and he had how many, like 100, well over 100 to tune. So bless him for moving through that and staying diligent and doing the work. Our music team is so strong and so positive, and they love each other and they're so supportive. So we have our choir going, our instruments are getting going, even for our younger ones, which we're so excited for. On our PTA meeting, we heard somebody playing away in the background on their trumpet. It was fantastic. Our tenured teachers were honored today, which warms my heart so much. First, yay! I started with one half of them at BIS and finished with the other half at Lincoln, and they are amazing. And to come into teaching right now is just, they're amazing. And so congratulations. I don't know where the camera is. Congratulations. I'm so proud of you guys. Our math and science committee is meeting tomorrow. So we're looking at our vision as a district, shifts in teaching learning, what's new, and eventually piloting. Roosevelt's new playground is the center of my household. So congratulations to Roosevelt and all our facilities. Our new PE rec or BIS rec center is coming along. There are two things I want to close with to back up what Ms. McLean said. We need subs so badly. So if you love kids and you want to have a great day, because I have great days and I have the best stories. Yes, you want to come sub for us. You can join our Donna Colson, our city council member has subbed. Brooke Hill, shout out to Ms. Hill, who's currently subbing for my reza, doing a wonderful job. And then my sister-in-law, Shada Afshar, has also been subbed. So we are bringing everybody in. Come join us for a good time. And then finally, I wanted to thank the team and the board for the flowers. At first I panicked because I forgot my anniversary was tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, dang it, I messed up. But it was your appreciation. And I'm so thankful. It was such a kind gesture. So I love my days. I love Arlington Lions, and I'm so grateful for all the work that goes into this community and these schools. They are the center of our world, and I'm so grateful to everyone. So thank you for my long report.
Thank you. And now we have our superintendent, Chris Malpinitas.
I can never follow Laura again. You are like Kimochis, Laura. That's like the one thing that I'm starting to realize. So, I would like to echo, I love hearing that we're all asking for subs now. I've been asking for a year. I've been able to personally appeal, and we've added almost 30 subs to our district just because I keep begging, including Donna Wilson, who's been subbing for us. And she's now trying to get the other council members to sub for us as well. It really is tough to find subs, and actually as a result of that, I know Ms. Bell is she's been working on an analysis of sub pay, and we're hearing from our subs that the reason that they're not coming here is that they are not getting it. So that will be a topic for discussion at the November board meeting, because it's not just us that are looking at sub pay, it's the entire county. So not only do we have to look at being competitive, but we have to look at being competitive with the whole county, which is a struggle. We're relying a lot on our community members and parents, but it's only getting us so far, and we just don't have enough. So it's a drum I keep beating. I'm sure I'll keep beating it because I know a lot of districts are going through the same thing. And I actually, it's not unusual anymore. We only have about 8 full-time folks in the district office anymore, but it's not unusual to come in the morning and 4 of them are out because we've been sending as well to try to spread out and take care of things. In fact, I'll be subbing for the principal of Hoover tomorrow. And then I'll be in a classroom next Thursday. So we're doing the best we can, but community members, if you are interested, Laura's school is a lot more fun than something anywhere else, obviously. That just came through, but we need as many subs as we can. And we appreciate, that's not to say we don't appreciate the 20 or 30 week gain, but we just need maybe 60 or 80 more. And that would really help. Professional development yesterday with the entire district was great. We really focused on social, emotional, and behavioral learning, not just with students, but I heard it mentioned that I asked for staff to reflect upon themselves and their own, the impacts that the last 18 months have had on them as well. It's a very timely topic. I know that a lot of us are still feeling very much, I call it at loose ends. We're reacting very differently to things that we used to take into stride. We are not always aware of all of our own behaviors and how to make sure that we're supporting ourselves and one another in sort of a manner that is helpful to all. So it's not just about our kids. And we've been really fortunate. So in Burlingame, the staff that we had yesterday conducting a lot of the learning, our social, emotional, and wellness team, they were behavioral specialists and psychologists and counselors. We're so really fortunate. We have so many more than a lot of our neighbors. In fact, we were able to hire all of our counseling positions this year because our neighbors were letting their counselors go, which I couldn't imagine happening right after the year and a half we've been through. So fortunately, we're still fully staffed, including a great new counselor that joined us yesterday. And as we onboarded him, he went to help lead professional development 2 hours later. So that was his introduction to his first day on the job. He actually got to join the team at the middle school for the afternoon learning. So a lot of good stuff going on. It's still a lot of things that we're working through, but it's nice to actually be back in person. We're starting to be back in person.
Thank you, Chris. Sure. Now we have the statements from our board members. Trustee Wong.
I don't have anything to report out. I'm just happy to be back in person again.
I have a couple of quick updates. BCE just wanted to make sure everybody knew that they are moving along with fundraising. They hit the 441 family mark on their goal of 1,000 by the end of the year. So there's still a big push there. And anyone who donates before October 31st, as long as they have signs left, they'll be putting signs in yards. And then they're shifting their focus to Giving Tuesday after Thanksgiving. That's their next big push will be Giving Tuesday that they're looking forward to. PTA council meeting is actually set for next week, so we don't have any PTA updates tonight. And then the only other thing I was involved in, the science adoption. I sat in that committee for the first time last week or 2 weeks ago. And it was just amazing to kind of see the beginning stages. We got to do experiments, we got to kind of hear what's going on in science. And I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing that process. It's exciting to see teachers and principals and parents and everyone actually working collaboratively to come up with the new science curriculum. We were part of the history last year, but because it was Zoom, it was a little bit harder. And I mean, science is so fun. History is fun too, but science, like there's hands-on, there's activities, there's a lot of kind of changes that have happened since the last time we adopted curriculum in science. So going through that and just talking about all the different components, I'm really excited to see what happens with that committee and where it goes.
Trustee Sarhango, do you have a statement?
Yeah, thank you, President Kendall. Yeah, just quick, I was going to mention, like Trustee Reed mentioned, along with the other board members, attended an event with DCE and just wanted to again thank and call out the generosity of the community in helping to support our students and our teachers and staff in the entire district. And so we really appreciate that assistance and encourage everybody to kind of continue that as we move along. And then besides that, I had a number of discussions with members of the community, parents, teachers, staff members, etc. And I think there's a lot of noise out there that that may sound a little bit ominous, but I was actually really encouraged with the number of the discussions I had with a lot of thoughtful people, both from the teacher side and from the district side and parent side. And I'm optimistic that not only I think are we on the right path, but I think that things are going to be working out with respect to the current impasse situation, but we'll see how that all plays out. But I was pleased to hear a lot of helpful suggestions and people who really cared about just ensuring the best education for our students. So I thank everybody who has shared their thoughts, and we've also, I think, encouraged Superintendent Benitez and his staff to help everybody better understand the details behind the situation that we're all trying to navigate and find the best solution to. So thanks everybody for constructively contributing toward that, and hopefully progress to come over the coming time.
Thank you. Trustee Mud?
I'm excited to be here for my first in-person meeting. It's an interesting introduction to the board. So I'm happy to be here with all of you guys, even with our masks on. That's normalcy returning. Since our last meeting, I have attended the math curriculum adoption meeting and the city and district liaison meeting. The math adoption meeting was a full day and very informative and productive. What I heard from the committee was that there was a strong appreciation from the teachers that the district and current administration was tapping into their expertise and bringing them to the table to choose our next curriculum. It was clear that our teachers had strong opinions and passion that they took into this committee. Data was presented from our student population and test results were presented, and the teachers had a lot of thoughtful conversations around that and best practice in math. The committee will work together over the course of the school year. We'll have 9 sessions to collaborate and choose and then pilot the curriculum as you heard. Members of the committee were teachers from every site and grade level, Assistant Superintendent Silversmith, principals, 2 parent representatives, and myself. We have our second meeting tomorrow. And then along with Trustee Kendall,
President Kendall, I attended the city district liaison meeting. That meeting is integral for strong relationship between the school district and the city. For those that are here zooming in, the meetings consist of our city manager, 2 city council representatives, Parks and Rec, 2 trustees, and Superintendent Benitez. And we discussed in the last meeting everything from workforce housing to updates to the new recreation center and city planning and how that might ultimately impact our enrollment.
Thank you. And I don't have much more to add, but I'm very glad to be here in person with all of you. It's so good to see you and be off of that screen. And I attended the meeting with Lisa for the city council district and district liaison committee. And I'm just so glad we have this committee where our city meets with the school district and talk about current issues and give updates to each other. So that was a very productive meeting. All right, so let's move on. We next have a board communication from the San Mateo County Office of Education. Would you like to give me the information on that or any comments that we have?
It's just approval of our LCAP that was submitted by Assistant Superintendent Smith. It's in there as the acceptance letter.
This is just an information item. Anyone has any questions? Okay, so now the next item is the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Give a second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Moving on to item 19.
Great. Item 19, the only administrative item that we have for this board meeting is the resolution of 2122-9, the week of the school administrator. So I know that Laura, Principal Abshar, had mentioned that she got flowers. So Kirsten was kind enough that flowers went out from the board and myself and the administrative team to all of the certificated administrators. So all of our principals, and then of course we have Ms. Silversmith and Ms. Spencer at the district office, who are also certificated administrators. So just a token of appreciation for the week of the school administrator. And so I would ask that the board approve the resolution approving this as officially the week of the school administrator. Of course, our principals are so integral. We only have 1 per site. We're a small district. We have 3 at BIS, but we still get by with a pretty minimal administrative team in the district, and they do so much work. And as you heard, the passion and joy tonight that they bring to their job, and that's why they're here, and they do a fantastic job. So I would ask that the board pass the resolution recognizing this as their week.
We're all extremely grateful to our administrators, including our superintendent, for all the hard work that done, especially this past year. And I think we're going to be very happy to approve this resolution. Are there any other? Okay, we do have a motion to approve this resolution recognizing our school administrators.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution recognizing our administrators.
And we have a second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so now we're in the education section of our agenda, and we have our Summer Learning 2021 presentation.
Thank you, President Kendall. I would like for Lizette Cuevas and Nate Long to come up, who are our 2 summer school administrators who will be presenting this evening. Mr. Takis, may I give them the clicker? Yes. Okay. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Nate Wong, and we were your summer administrators this last summer of 2021. Thank you. And we have a report for you that will cover the 4 different programs that we administered this summer. And is that the start?
Just right at the base of the TV. Should work like that.
It's just the
Yes. If you'd like, I can do it. You can
Oh,
just let me know next.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry about that.
4 different summer programs. For the extended school year, ESY, Step Up to Kindergarten, Summer Academy, and Camp Galileo. What is ESY? A program offered to special education students who display significant difficulties with coping skills following the summer break. The program is designed to maintain learned skills over the summer. And it went from June 21st to July 16th of 2021. 35 students attended ESY this summer. What is Step Up to Kindergarten? A program that is offered to students who have not attended preschool prior to kindergarten. It went from July 6th to August 6th of 2021, and 19 students attended Step Up to Kindergarten this summer.
Okay, so next is Camp Galileo, and we worked with Camp Galileo this year, and we were able to send 157 of our students here in Burlingame to Camp Galileo free of charge. So we were able to cover the cost of 157 students. There was a breakdown of the students per school site. We had 2 sessions, one in June, starting in June and ending on July 2nd. And the other one from August 9th to 13th. All right, so this year we were very excited to be able to work with Camp Galileo to provide 30% discount for all of our Burlingame students. And a total of 95 students across the district were able to take advantage of this discount. All right, and our last program was the Summer Academy. And the Summer Academy is a program designed to reinforce the concepts that were taught in the previous year and in a regular classroom setting, which was special this year because of how much distance learning we had prior to that. The dates were from July 12th to August 6th, so 4 weeks. And a total of 403 students signed up and attended the Summer Academy this year. We did open it up to general registration, and 45 students did sign up. And the total revenue from tuition for those students was $41,214. And for the rest of the students, which was a total of 258, the district was able to provide scholarships. And so here are just some pictures. You can scroll through them. And you can note here the new furniture that we got this summer, which is amazing. And so the Summer Academy was held at the Kingdom School District. Okay, so to wrap up the presentation, this is our total financial impact for all 4 of our programs this year. So ESY, and this is mostly staffing costs, so including our para educators and our mental health staff as well as our teachers. So ESY was $31,000, $564.15. The Summer Academy was a total of $181,000. $181,12.53. Step Up to Kinder was $6,000.24. And then our full Camp Galileo contract was $72,789.70. And broken down, we have for scholarships, it was $62,200. And then for the 30% discount for all Burlingame students, it was $10,589.70. Total transportation costs were $36,000. We did provide busing and carpools to and from homeschool sites. And then the total financial impact for 2021 is at the bottom here, $327,366.62. And so with that, we'd like to open it up to any questions.
So, in terms of feedback from the families, have you heard back from them, or have they let you know, what went well, what didn't go well?
Sure. I think, well, the feedback that I got was very positive, and I know a lot of families are planning on doing it again next year. And I think most of them were just very excited to be able to have this opportunity to send their kids to an in-person learning. So,
I want to see that there were some parents that would say, oh, certain teachers, they're open to the teachers. My child just loved her. My child is here just because of the teacher he has. So we got a lot of that. And personally, it was amazing to see the teachers, to be standing in a different position and to see the work that they see. I usually just see my students and see myself teaching, but when you see the rest of the teachers, it's just amazing. Really magic happens in the class.
Ms. Cuevas, Mr. Wong, do you mind telling the board what you do for Burlingame during the school year? If they don't know, especially after that comment, Ms. Cuevas.
I
It'd be
am a
great.
kindergarten teacher and I teach Spanish immersion.
I'm a music teacher, and I'm at Washington, McLean, and Hoover. Any other questions?
I did. It was also about family feedback and then also teacher feedback. And then if we have any way of like understanding how progress was made and how that.
Yes, we
happened.
can.
Okay.
I just want to say that there was not really assessments per se, like formal assessments during the summer.
Even anecdotal.
What I did see was kids having fun during playtime, during the PE, conversing with the teachers. I saw that especially mostly with the ESY. I mean, I had a really good time with those kids. It was really amazing to be with them and have those conversations. It's a very closeness with the teacher when you're working with the ESY. So I can say that, and I saw them happy too. Like they were excited to be there, just to be with other children.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think we will be collecting data in the next couple months and providing an update in regards to some of the students that. But in terms of teacher feedback, as far as I know, the teachers all loved it, and not all of them will be back next year because of travel plans. Hopefully, once things open up. But we do have a wonderful staff. We have 29 staff members total, which was a lot, but we needed a lot of staff to service.
Well, and that leads into my question, because I know when we talked about this program early on, there was anticipation that it was going to be much bigger than years past because of COVID and distance learning. So do we know now, like compared to what we've seen in past years and how many kids we have participated in these summer programs versus this year, how much bigger was it?
No, absolutely. Our summer learning academy was huge compared to what we've had historically, and it was also a new component with the pay for fee. And a lot of parents chose to come in, and our students seem to really like it. We're already getting asked about registration for next year, so kudos to both of you. And with regards to the data, so our students also took their exams at the end of last year, and they just did their reopener exam. So there will be data coming forward showing students that attended versus students that didn't, and that we'll be able to bring forward or bring to a weekly update to be able to provide that. But yes, it was much bigger. And I just want to say, Ms. Cuevas and Mr. Wong stepped up. This is the first time. It was amazing to have two of our own teachers say, hey, I would like to try that. And you both did such an amazing job. And I just really want to say thank you to you for that. Because that leadership is really important. And so thank you very much. And I just really appreciate all the outreach you did. Support. It was free lunches, as you know, this summer. So Mr. Wong and Ms. Cuevas were very busy the whole time on campus. So I appreciate that too.
And just so that the board remembers, so we were able to expand it because the Academy and Galileo, our contribution, that's not typical for us. But the state and the money that they gave us for COVID said that the district actually had to provide summer learning opportunities. So that's why it was able to be expanded. And they gave us enough money to support it the past year that's being spoken to and the coming year. So they only gave money for 2 years. And so we don't know if they're going to ever do it it again, but that's why we were able to extend this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Okay, so item 20.2, we have a public hearing on sufficient textbooks. Let's open this public hearing. on Sufficient textbooks.
We have no comments.
Okay, so I'll close the hearing. All right. Moving on to item 20.3. Now we have a resolution on instructional materials and sufficient textbooks.
Yes, so we are bringing forward this evening our resolution on materials and sufficient textbooks. As you know, we had two brand new adoptions this year. There's a digital platform and a paper consumable or hardback component. Every student has access to every textbook, either digitally or within their books. And so we are bringing forward a resolution tonight, asking for approval of instructional materials.
So this is an action item to approve this resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2021-22-8, instructional materials and sufficient textbooks.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Trustee Sarpingle?
Yes, but for the avoidance of doubt, unless I say no, I'm an aye.
We'll need you to say aye each vote. I'm sorry, Trustee Sarpingle.
Fine with me, it just sometimes it's synchronous with them, with party here, but okay with me.
Thank you.
Item 20.4, equity and diversity update. Ms. Silversmith. Thank you.
All right, so I am honored tonight to be bringing our first Jedi presentation to the board with regards to some numbers from our student data information. So as you know, Jedi stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and is a work group that belongs to a lot of our teachers, classified administrators, and a rotating board member. There we go. Okay, so our current overall enrollment as of, and Chris loves when I say this word, it's a snapshot. So it can go up and down within an hour. So it's my snapshot. 3322 for our students that are in TK and 8, and then 20 preschool students. So remember, our preschool students we do have to staff for. So there are 20 preschool students that are receiving some sort of speech or resource or other support within our district. So there was actually a question about this. So socioeconomically disadvantaged, also known as farm or free and reduced lunch meals. The other word that is being used a lot lately are vulnerable population, which I actually really like. So we'll probably be transferring that a little bit to that more positive term for a temporary situation, hopefully. So in 2019-20, we had 409 students at 11.5%. 2021, we had 325 students and 10.4%. Currently, we have 215 at 6.4. So part of what we've done in the research of looking at why this number has dropped so significantly is because there's free lunch for all. So there's not a big incentive for a lot of our families to complete the paperwork. So we're really working to get information out to our community on the other incentives for if you qualify. Reduced utilities, support with cell phone bills, internet, that type of stuff. So we've put it out in Superintendent Malpanis' newsletter. It is also getting stuff in student backpacks, and principals are working directly with students.
So you think it's primarily due to the paperwork and not due to migration?
We're
in the process.
We're in the process of finding out, but we do know that we have families that are currently here that have historically been registered for it that are not currently. So
And that affects our funding for a duplicated.
correct. So students with English as an additional language, if you remember, we changed it a few years ago from ELL to a positive term. So we like our positivity here. In 2019-20, we had 493 students, 13.9. 2021, 395, 11.6. And currently 467 at 13.97. That number will change. We're currently in the middle of our initial LPACs, our English language performance test, which will allow students to reclassify. And then we'll be able to, now that we can person get full medals again. Students with an IEP. So in 2019-20, we had 295 students at 8.3, 2021, 288 at 8.4, currently 293 at 8.8. We are seeing that number increase some. We are still way below our state and national averages for students with IEPs.
I was about to make that comment too, and also do we differentiate students that, you know, they have an IEP maybe for one subject area, so it's like resource versus a child who needs a lot more services? Do we know that breakdown?
We actually do know that breakdown, and we know the breakdown by grade level and also by disability. And so Dr. Spencer will come and do another Jedi update, really disaggregating our special ed data so you can look at those numbers closely. So foster youth, again, anytime we have less than 10 students, we report it as less than 10 students because we want to make sure that as to the greatest extent possible, we are keeping it non-identifiable. This one might be an interesting one. In housing transition is formerly known as homeless. Historically, we have not reported that number. That has been a number we keep in district. Currently, we are at 14 students within our district that are within housing transition. So we work with those families, we support them. Even if they're not living within Burlingame, but they're homeless, we support them because Burlingame is their home school. So we provide transportation and other supports that are needed for the students to get access to their education.
On those 2 previous school years, it should be the less than.
Yes.
That's the opposite.
You're ready to flip it, sorry.
Yeah, I just more than 10.
Thank you.
Like,
Thank
why
you.
does it Say it's more, okay, so it should be less than 10.
Less than 10, yes. Okay. Those are our numbers.
Are we sending paperwork home for free reduced lunch in home language?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so we have it translated. We also have site staff that are calling homes using we have a company called Language Links that does milieu in the moment translation, which is amazing to be able to have live conversations too. Yes.
I was also going to comment on, I think the state average for an IEP is 12% or 8%. And I was just curious, like, do you think that sometimes it's difficult for people to understand how to approach school to talk about an IEP for their child?
So I think that within Burlingame, I can tell you that there's a lot of outreach done for students. And it's one of the districts that has very high screeners. And we really work with students to intervene prior to needing that highest level of support. So I think that has a lot to do with it. We do work very closely with families and through CDAC to be able to get information out and support. But we do see that we have a lot of students that really thrive within the realms of the second tier of intervention prior to getting to the third. But we do, and as Trustee Wong said, you'll see when we go into the disaggregated data within special ed, you'll see under representation in some areas. And so we've also done a large amount of work with our Asian and Asian Pacific Islander community.
It's pretty impressive that it's remained consistent throughout COVID. So that means you were continuing to seek out.
Yeah, our special ed department was very busy doing assessments. We were one of the few districts that were bringing kids in assessments when kids weren't in school. So we don't have that huge backlog of assessments. So we were able to intervene pretty quickly and get people support.
I'll be curious also to see the vulnerable population where we end up, because with the drop in enrollment, I was looking kind of at what the correlation is with the drop of enrollment versus the number of students. And it looks like, especially if that number continues to go up, that the majority of the students that we're not seeing come back are in that vulnerable population. So I know there was a lot of talk in the community about kids leaving the private school and other, all of our students are leaving, but really it looks like this is the area where we're seeing that happen without being able to bring that population back. So
we will definitely do an update with regards to that population once we have done some very targeted outreach. There's been a multi-department, as Alice is back there, it's been a multi-department work around to try and reach them, because we want to make sure people are getting the support.
And it's hard because it's such a delicate conversation now. It's not a,
Right.
it's not an easy.
Well, we want to make sure that they're on our radar as we go forward, looking at things like math and everything else, but we're providing opportunities that historically they might not have access to. So we want to make sure that we're helping to target and support our students.
Well, and as of now, the free lunch for all isn't expected to continue after this year, right? So.
It's ongoing in California.
This
Our
year,
conversation.
and, yeah, this is the last year that it's voluntary, starting next year, it will be a statewide.
Oh, wow, for everyone, for all students. Interesting. So then you'll continue to have a harder time.
We're definitely being innovative in how we seek and how we support, but I'll be honest, our teachers and our principals know their families very well.
Yeah.
So they're able to really reach out, and new families we're working with, and we're just trying to get the word out to every avenue that we can to make sure that we're catching that.
Yeah, and certainly, I think also with this pandemic, like, there were stories of second harvest and, lots of food banks seeing people who have never, ever tried to use a food bank in the past. And even people driving up in, like a pretty fancy car, it just happens to be their car, but they found themselves in really dire straits that they've never been in before. And so there could be, some families here who maybe, maybe are so unfamiliar with what's out there because they've never had to tap into it. That we need to encourage to push past maybe a little embarrassment they might have for having a fairly dramatic change in their economic situation to please take advantage of programs that are there for people.
Yeah. This is great information.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much. Welcome. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so now we are in the business section of our agenda. And we're at 21.1, Hoover Elementary tree removal and pruning project.
Exciting.
I'm happy to do it. So.
Tim's not gonna show up in a hat.
No, that's something good. He actually decided not to come in tonight, but his items can be pretty straightforward. So the Hoover Hillside tree removal is the trees that are either already dead or dying that exist either on the rear of the property at the school abuts, meaning that they are hanging over the property, the school property, or they are on the neighbor's lawn and pose potential property damage risk if they're to fall. And so we're going with the lowest appropriate bid, which is for $19,600 to remove all of those that were done.
Questions? My only question is, if it's on the agenda at this point, has the city approved it and everything has already happened, or is there still a process that?
So as a school district, you actually don't need approval. You are public entity into yourself, so it just needs the board.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the tree removal?
A motion to approve the Hoover Elementary School tree removal and pruning project manual and bid result.
Second. Okay. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
21.2, again at Hoover. Now we're talking about the drainage improvements.
Yes, so we are looking to go out and get the final documents approved and seeking bids for construction. And this is for the Hoover Hillside Drainage Project. So when we repurchased the Hoover site, including the 5 acres of hillside behind it, which is mostly just natural forested, we have a drainage sort of pathway going down the hill, and during the rainy season, it just basically drains mud from the entire hillside and usually dumps it right into the parking lot. And so to mitigate that, we need to actually build a drainage culvert. So all of the documents are done. You can look at the attachments and look at the request for a bid. Essentially what this will look like is a large ditch going down, and then before it hits the parking lot, it will actually go down into a concrete basin, which has steps down into it, so that our maintenance staff can actually shovel it out instead of trying to unshovel the parking lot in. So this is already in Fund 21, our bond program. And so this will be charged to Fund 21, but we're seeking approval to move forward with proceeding with it.
So is there no way to actually stop the mud from coming down? I mean,
I
it
guess it
doesn't
doesn't
stop
rain.
it, it just, I mean, it dumps into a pool
Right.
instead of the parking lot.
Correct.
So, I mean, then we have to shovel it somewhere.
And where do we cut it? Like, where,
We put it in the truck and we haul it off.
And then slowly that amount gets smaller and smaller. because
I don't know if it's that. A lot of what comes down is a combination of not just like the debris, lots of leaves, sticks, animal carcasses, all sorts of other things that come down off the hill.
We can't control that.
Yes, it just comes, water tends to flow down and we're at the bottom.
Yeah,
We're at the bottom of the hill, so.
so it
So
will
that's
always
right.
be like that, and as long as it rains.
And yeah, as long as we have rain, it will continue to happen. It has been a long-standing problem, so we're finally getting to fixing it.
It's very exciting too.
was it a problem in the old building or is it something about the way that it was built?
It's always been an issue. Drainage down the hillside's always been an issue. It's the fact that the only place that we have that we can put parking is where it is because of the shape of the property and also the slope of the hillside. And so the slope of the hillside there is actually fairly steep. So it just literally comes down and dumps into the parking lot because it's still trying to head downhill. And now we're on the hill.
Right, before it was just,
No.
yeah, so before we bought it and
There wasn't a parking lot
there
there.
wasn't a bunch of.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the drainage improvements at Hoover?
I'll make a motion because this is very exciting. I've been hearing about this here. I'll make a motion to approve Hoover Elementary School drainage improvements construction document.
Great, and the second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Item 21.3, the elementary and secondary school emergency relief expenditure.
Tonight, we are bringing forward the ESSER 3 expenditure plan as part of the American Recovery Plan Act funding requirements. Educational Services and the Fiscal Department developed this plan to ensure that each student has access to support and ensure that specific student groups are receiving targeted interventions and instruction. The amount of the ESSER 3 funds is $773,367, which are restricted.
Do you have any questions?
I'm just gonna say this for anyone that's watching, this money is going for things like our school counselors,
Yes, so we aligned the ESSER 3 plan with our ELOP, which was the extended learning opportunity plan, and our LCAP, and it does fall in line with that. We do have additional classroom support and instructional aids and counseling supports in it.
Hey, Amanda, Deepak, I had a question on the funds. When I read through the docs, like, it seems pretty clear that all that stuff was, important expenditures. I was just curious for my understanding, does the district have discretion in how it allocates among the categories? Like, for instance, one of the categories was like smaller class sizes, which is always generally a good thing. But like, do we need to sort of have some allocated to some of, there was that second bucket, there were two different main buckets. Are we constrained by sort of like how that works? Or I'm just curious the process on that.
Okay, so on the, sorry, I have it up right now on the, we do, we have, it is actually broken up into two pieces. The strategies for continuous and safe in-person learning is actually can account for up to 80% of the $700,000. And that addressing lost instructional time only needs to account for 20%. What we did is falling in line with the ELOP and the LCAP. We followed the same structure for the planned fund expenditures, but it is still at our discretion as long as we stay within the 80-20 split.
Got it. Yeah. So basically, we get these sort of supplementary, kind of funds from the state that are non-recurring, and there's a certain amount that we have to allocate, towards, effectively ensuring that the educational experience is relatively comparable to sort of pre-pandemic. And then we have a certain amount left over that we can effectively spend to reduce class sizes, but we can't take all of it, for example, and allocate to that, correct?
Correct. So the calculation for the smaller, maintaining smaller class sizes, that comes from, instead of operating our TK3 at a 1:24 ratio, that is the cost at maintaining for our current amount of classrooms in the district, a 1:23 ratio. So that allocation can change. The nursing services, that was just a portion. We did a calculation. This is of the restricted funds. We feel like this much should go to nursing services. The technology, now that we are a 1:1 student device ratio, you'll see later on in the unaudited actuals presentation that we only have a certain amount of year-to-date funds that do not account for our whole technology plan. So it's really broken up on how to support the students, the staff, along with the district's needs in mind.
Great. No, really appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's important to make sure everybody understands that we do get these supplementary funds from the government. However, again, we do have certain things that we have to spend it on that essentially have to do with improving the educational experience for the students, either directly in supplies and services and such, or through smaller class sizes, effectively more teachers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I believe this is an action item. So do we have a motion to approve the ESSER 3 plan?
I'll make a motion to approve the ESSER 3 plan.
Okay, a second.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay,
Let me pause.
yeah, let's. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Great. So next is 21.4, the 2021 unaudited actuals report.
Your first presentation of finances. There you go.
Thank you, President Kendall, Superintendent Malpanukas, and members of the board. This evening, we are moving forward the fiscal close report for the 2021 school year. I will move through the presentation and answer any questions at the end. Our first slide is a high-level picture of the district's general operating fund, including both restricted and unrestricted resources. The first column shows the district's second interim, which was presented to the board in March with a snapshot date of February 3rd. The second column is the district's actual revenue and expenditures through June 30th, the close of the fiscal year. Projected revenues at second interim were $41.4 million. Our actual revenue were $43.9 million. We received additional $2.5 million in funding. Projected expenditures at second interim were $42 million and actual expenditures were $39.2 million. We spent roughly $2.7 million less than anticipated. This slide breaks down our general fund revenues by major category. Our district received an additional $1.1 million of LCFF funding. The additional funding came from the Hold Harmless EPA Budget Act of 2020, and because of our district moved from an LCFF funded district to basic aid district for the last 3 months of the fiscal year. July 1st, we moved back to an LCFF funded district. Other state revenue increased by $1.3 million over second interim due to additional COVID revenue for fully reopening our schools.
I'll try.
This slide breaks down our general operating fund expenditures by major categories. The district saves roughly $900,000 in salaries and benefits for not filling vacant management positions, mainly at the district level. Additional savings of supplies and other operating expenditures were due to lower costs associated with distance learning and our one-time savings. Our final slide represents each fund's beginning balance and ending balance for fiscal year 2021. The general fund, Fund 01, which is our main operating fund, had an ending balance of $8.8 million with a statutory reserve of 1.1 million, a restricted reserve of 2.1 million, and an unassigned reserve of $5.5 million. Fund 08, the Student Activity Fund, is a new fund. This fund was created to house student-raised funds from BIS, and it had an ending balance of $7,184. Fund 13 is the Cafeteria Special Revenue Fund, which separately accounts for federal, state, and local resources to operate our food service program. Fund 14 is the Deferred Maintenance Fund. It is reserved for major replacement of plumbing, heating, air conditioning, electrical, roofing, and flooring. The difference, everything that came into deferred maintenance this year was from interest. So we didn't have any expenditures and no other revenue. Fund 17, the Special Reserves Fund for other than capital outlay. This fund increased by $6 million over last fiscal year. Board policy 3105 and numerous resolutions contributed to the increase in fund balance. A 7% reserve of $2.7 million, a strategic foundation support commitment of $2.5 million, our technology replacement of $200,000 year to date. It holds our ELA and history adoptions at $1.6 million and our math and science adoption of $773,000 year to date. Fund 21, our building fund, exists to account separately for proceeds from the sale of bonds and may not be used for any purpose other than those for which the bond was issued. Fund 25, capital facilities. This fund is used to account for monies received from fees levied on development projects, also known as developer fees. Fund 40 is a special reserve fund for capital outlay projects. Monies in this fund are committed to turf replacement at Osborne and Franklin Fields. And as you can see, year to date, we have roughly $500,000 set aside or committed for Osborne Field and $416,000 for Franklin Field. Fund 73 is the Foundation Private Purpose Fund with a balance of $15,911, and this is the Osborne Scholarship Foundation. This concludes the 2021 unaudited actuals presentation. Does the board have any questions?
May I jump in with a few questions?
Absolutely.
Sure.
I know it's a shocker. So I guess starting with the first, I think these are all really important slides. So I guess on the first one, I think pretty straightforward, but just to clarify and maybe highlight. So we ended up with more revenue than we expected and lower costs. So effectively, our actual results came in roughly $5 million better than what we originally expected. Is that correct?
Yes, 5.2 million.
Okay, so it would be pretty reasonable to consider that good news, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so I mean, I actually think this is great, right? So we ended up with a positive variance. So that is certainly an incremental positive relative to what we had previously been discussing and previously been utilizing for our forecast. However, I guess the biggest issue with it, like, should we expect to sort of continue to have this kind of positive variance for the coming year?
No, so just over $5 million variance, 2 million of that is restricted one-time revenue right off the bat. So if you take that out, out of consideration. The other variances were due to moving into the basic aid district. That was a one-time revenue stream. We will not see that anymore. Our expenditures were really down because our schools were closed for so much of the year. Our utilities, our power, our water, transportation, all of those costs, we probably will see again this year. So the expectation is that though we have this larger ending fund balance from last year, we have restricted funds, our cost will actually grow this fiscal year and years moving forward.
Got it. Yeah, so I think probably unquestionably positive news in that for the last year at least, we ended up better than expected. However, that is for a single period of time. And so the issue is going forward, there are some non-recurring items that are not expected to continue and some incremental headwinds potentially that that could reverse it, right? So I think if I'm incorrect, feel free to correct me, but my interpretation of this would be definitely positive. We'd obviously rather have positive variances rather than negative variances. And so we are, again, relatively in a better position than we were before. However, it still does not solve kind of upcoming challenges to the budget over the coming years. And so it's good news, but it's, it has to be balanced against other things. So I think that's good. And I think that I would encourage everyone to examine not just the actual financial results, but I think earlier when we approved the LCAP, that was approved by the county, it contained the multi-year budget projection. And I think that sort of both summarizes and contains the detailed information for sure what Amanda's talking about in terms of deficits for the coming year. I guess, I think it makes pretty good sense then that these one-time factors are kind of reverting. And so you mentioned kind of like the funds that we received to assist with COVID, but I guess beyond that, there's also, I think, the hold harmless for ADA, correct, for attendance that we still benefit from, I think, this year, but the following couple years, that goes away, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So this is the last year of hold harmless. We'll receive 1920 ADA. And then in next year, we will go back to the higher of current year or prior year, which still kind of swings you at 1920 ADA for one more year. And then we'll see a dramatic decline because our enrollment is down.
Yep.
Quite good.
Makes sense. Yep. Excellent. And then I guess on the last slide on the various fund reserves, so we'll focus just on like the bigger line items. You mentioned that the building fund is specifically for facilities, so we'll exclude that because that's earmarked specifically for that. But in terms of fund reserves that plausibly could be used for kind of like the general budget, so Fund 01, can you explain, you said restricted 2.1 million and unassigned 5.5 million. What does that mean?
Okay.
Right? How should we think about that?
So the restricted revenue, it can only be spent on certain things. That revenue includes some of the COVID state and federal funding. It includes our Title I, Title II, Title IV funds. They're very specific dollars for very specific purposes. That also includes, we did have an ending balance in restricted lottery, which can only be used for instructional materials. So that is just the 2.1 million is when you put each of those resources together at the end of the year, that is how much was allocated in 2021, but will not be spent until 21-22. And excuse me, some of the COVID money we do have until August of 2024.
Makes sense. And how about the unassigned 5.5 million?
So the unassigned 5.5 million is what is not been committed by the board. So it does not include the 7% or anything else we've committed. It is generally what has fallen to our ending fund balance. It can be used for numerous things. As we discussed in the Fund 17, we have quite a bit of year-to-dates there that we do not have enough funds for: our math and science adoption, our technology replacement. Any raise that we do give to our bargaining units are not accounted for in our budget or our multi-year projections. So that would all come out of the unassigned 5.5 million, anything that we gave moving forward. And as any of these expenditures grow, they will grow bigger in our multi-years. So if we were to spend $100,000 on something this year, it would be $103,000 next year. So that you also have to take into consideration the compounding effect of our expenditures.
Gotcha. Okay. So basically, you know, the statutory 3% reserve is a true reserve. The restricted is technically in the fund, but not really an available reserve because it's earmarked for specific purposes. And the unassigned, it sounds like, is kind of a mix of both because we effectively need to use that to fund these other items, but it's technically not earmarked for something specific. So there's some flexibility there, correct?
Yes, there is. And another thing,
Okay.
oh, sorry, another thing
That's not like,
to take into consideration is if we do increase our expenditures on years out, that will also increase our 3% reserve and our 7% reserve. So if we spend an extra $1 million next year, we actually have to put more of our unassigned fund balance towards our reserves.
yep, makes sense. Okay, and then, so that's Fund 01. And then how about, so for Fund 17, 7% reserve, that is just, if I'm understanding correctly, that is the 7% reserve that as a district, we are holding in excess of the statutory 3% reserve for added cushion, correct?
Yes, that is the local reserve of 7%,
Yep.
which is part of our board policy.
Okay, and then the strategic foundation support of $2.5 million, obviously like BCE, but can you help explain, like, is that a reserve or like, how should we think about that $2.5 million?
Okay.
Because it's part of our budget, correct? So
Yeah.
just want to make sure it's treated correctly.
Yes, so at part of, also in board policy 3105, or 05, I'm sorry, the board committed the special reserve for strategic foundation to bridge any reduction of revenue received from BCE in the amount of $2.5 million. This is because Burlingame School District receives our current year allocation from BCE in August or September, well after the adopted July 1 budget. And the district has a fiscal responsibility to maintain a reserve to offset any potential grant shortfalls.
Got it. So this would be a reserve of $2.5 million that is in place for the coming school year in the event that we don't get $2.5 million from BCE.
It is a commitment that the board has committed the funds, so it is not a reserve, but they are committed on the fact that we do not receive. So much of our BCE funding is in our staffing, and in order for layoffs each year, you know, we have to give that notice by March 1. So if BCE is not able to present the check to us in August or September, how do you pay for all those? How do you pay for your staffing? Is really a big question.
I think something that you just said there actually may help dispel a lot of confusion. So you mentioned that this is a fund, not a reserve, right? You said that you know, this is $2.5 million that is not really a reserve, and maybe you can just help clarify that because the description of Fund 17 says special reserve, but this $2.5 million you said isn't a reserve really. So I think that might help maybe clarify confusion in terms of maybe lumping it in under our reserve.
So it is
Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, no, but
Yeah.
the point being that, like, I think it's effectively,
Yeah.
it's a fund and it's an allocation, but it isn't a true reserve as we would think about it in terms of
So you
funds and sort of cushion available to help meet budgetary shortfalls, correct?
yes. So just to help really quickly, trustee Sarpongo, so a school district, when it says reserves, we actually literally don't commit those reserves to anything unless the board releases them and tells us what to spend them on. So the only true reserves here are the 3% statutory in Fund 1 and the 7% local reserve in Fund 17. The title of Fund 17 given by the state is called special reserves, and we can put not just reserves in there, but we can put commitments. So the strategic foundation support is actually a financial commitment to cover the liability that Ms. Bonnevert is identifying that exists between March 15th of each year and whenever we receive the check in August or September, because if there's a shortfall, we cannot legally do anything about that shortfall. We are committed to continuing to support those positions until the following year. So we don't have a choice if there's ever a shortfall. We're required to have some way to cover it if something happens. So that's a commitment. It's not a reserve because that's not something that we can just do anything we want with. A reserve is just put aside in the case of emergency that the board can direct us to fill in a shortfall for, like, I don't know, let's say the government collapses or we go into an emergency mode, then it gets us to cover, like COVID. It gives us money to cover like payroll to keep operations going, but this is very a specific commitment to cover a specific liability. And that's actually what the rest of these are as well. They are not reserves. So like our commitments to buy textbooks, we put it there last year for $1.6 million. We just got the bill this year, but we needed a way to pay it. We can't just let it go unpaid. So we put that commitment aside so that we had the money to pay it from somewhere. And so that's the difference. Now, the only other reserve that exists that's not labeled as a reserve is technically the unassigned or uncommitted, which is still in Fund 1. That 5.5 million, until the board commits it to something, is actually an undesignated reserve technically. So the board does have flexibility, just like our other reserves versus commitments, to direct staff to put that towards whatever priority they have. I hope that helps.
Thank you. No, that's really helpful. I think all those explanations are really helpful because I think it helps clarify the confusion that I frequently come across, which is these are, like, many of these are assumed to be or considered to be reserved, or like, you know, I've seen some communications around a reserve of 29% of the budget, but again, these aren't all truly free reserves. And the mere fact that we happen to have cash sitting in a bank account or, you know, earmarked funds for specific commitments or purposes is not the same as having that excess capital just sitting there doing nothing. I think the important distinction that you made is that there are expenditures that these funds are required to be applied towards, either specifically, you know, predetermined or, as you said, approved by the board as we go along. And so the true amount of reserves in our sort of system is a much lower number than is I think assumed or quoted. Notwithstanding that number is also declining over the coming years or forecast too, but I just wanted to make sure that is clarified because I think fairly a lot of people have been confused by this because this isn't straightforward stuff. I mean, there's a lot of complexity to school finance, but I think your explanations really help kind of better elucidate that we aren't sitting on some massive reserve that is being withheld for some reason. It's actually a smaller amount than is being assumed generally out there.
Yes. So for example, those adoption commitments, I think we've gotten the bill for those. Yes.
Yeah.
So that even though we're showing that we closed June 30th at $1.6 million in Fund 17 for ELA and history, social science, we've gotten the bill for 1.7 million that we paid. So you will see this it's actually gone already. So So that's the report that ended the fiscal year, and thank goodness we set the money aside because we needed it to pay the bill, right? So that commitment has gone. The other thing I would say is, yes, our reserves, the 10%, as well as the unassigned fund balance did go up by the amount that Ms. Bonnevert stated that we got extra revenue and we underspent, which is why we have that 5 point whatever million added to unassigned. And that will help us pay our bills going forward, but it's one-time money. It's not money coming in every year. So when it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah, and one final question on this, so related to this, like on the multi-year budget in the LCFS, is for the projection years, is the current assumption just kind of like the step and ladder increases, or is there an assumption, any assumption with respect to incremental compensation increases beyond the step and ladder in that multi-year forecast through, I think, 2024?
In the multi-year projections from the adopted budget?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
that builds in step and column only. We do not build in our what salary increases are until they are board approved.
Got it. Okay. So that's really important because if it's not building in any of the salary increases until they're board approved, I think I would just encourage people to review, if they haven't already, the LCAP budget that was approved by the county, which is the reason I was just mentioning that is when you go into certain of those line items, and I think it's also contained in the second file that is posted for this item. If you kind of go, dozens and dozens of pages in, and you look at even just the next fiscal year, so the forecast for 2021 and 2022, there are some pretty eye-popping increases on the cost side, in particular around salaries, benefits, unemployment insurance. Benefits mean not just STIRS and PERS, but the healthcare cost line item, I think, was also a big double-digit increase. And so I think that helps clarify a little bit more why it's a good thing that our budget has come in favorably for the last year, but for the upcoming years, the cost side of the equation is forecast to escalate quite dramatically, while the revenue is unfortunately forecasted to come down a little bit. So I would just kind of encourage people to just make sure they review that to understand the context and make sure the correct numbers are being reviewed and utilized. So, but it's great. I think it's great that we came in favorably last year. So that's better than the opposite. So,
And
and thanks for those explanations. Really helpful.
And I cannot speak too much to the 21-22 adopted budget. It was not my budget. There has also been a lot of changes at the state since that was brought out, but you guys will see second interim. First interim. First interim. I'm gonna just jump ahead and do it all at the November meeting, and I think that will have give the district a better picture of what we look like right now. There were some changes after, as you said, to workers' comp, or unemployment insurance. I believe at the budget we were at 1.23%, and the state came in, it's actually 0.5, which is well over the 0.05 from 2021. So there has been some fluctuations on that. New revenue amounts. We're starting to get our 21-22 allocations for our federal revenue to see what they look like, and we'll go from there.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Deepak. I think we're gonna move on to the other board members. Trustee Wong, do you have questions? Or Trustee Rao, just gonna go down the line.
Okay, I will do. Actually, Trustee Stefano actually asked a lot of my questions, so a couple of clarifications. One, my first clarification on slide 5, where it has all of the funds listed and all of the money. Is there any other funds or money that aren't listed on here? Is there any other, or is this everything?
This is everything.
Okay. Just confirming, there's been conversations and we've heard there's money somewhere and I just
There
want to
are
make sure
some
this is it.
pass-through funds like that we use through the county office, but everything is accounted for in these fund balances.
Because I know Fund 17, there's been a lot of talk about Fund 17, so that's the one specifically that I wanted to ask about. So one of my questions was the 1.6 million, so that's now not in there anymore. Well, 1.7 you said, for the textbooks, that's now come out after. Okay. And then my other question on the general fund, so I know we talked about a couple of things earlier tonight, the summer program and then the ESSER. So were those part of the restricted funds that are listed there, or just because I'm assuming that hadn't come out yet before the budget closed? Is that correct?
Our ESSER 3.
Yeah.
Was, there was a preliminary allocation, but we did not receive the actual allocation until about a month ago.
Okay, got it.
So that will be updated at in person.
Got it. And then,
But if you're asking if the presentation this evening for the summer program of $400,000 and some came out of that restricted balance, that's correct.
so it came out of restricted, it's not out of the unrestricted, so that's all part of the restricted, okay. Got it. And then so there was also 900,000 in vacant position savings, right? And you said most of those were district office and management positions. And I think so, there's a lot of questions about the number of staff members that have left. I know we've heard 25% of our teachers left, 49 teachers left. Can you clarify? Because I know we had a large number of people from the district office leave, obviously, for $900,000. Can you just clarify on those numbers?
Yeah, and so first of all, to clarify, we didn't necessarily have a lot leave last year. So when I got here, we had a number of folks that had submitted resignations to follow the former administration out, retire and whatnot. And what I did was I just didn't backfill. And so I frankly left the district office short-staffed because we were in a bit of a financial stretch. And we filled it in different ways. So sometimes we got rid of the work, sometimes we added other people, but big picture. So every year you have to set a period of time. So last fiscal year, so from July of, I remember what year? So July of 20 through June of 2021, we lost a total of 49. So we had a turnover of 49 positions. Now I've seen a lot of what you're referring to, and we heard it tonight, that it was 50 some or it was whatever. It was 49, and they were not all full-time positions, right? Of those 49 positions, only 23 were teachers, right? So everybody's lumping it all together because if you go back to all of the board meetings and you pull the HR item, it actually tells you resignations, retirements, separations, people that get married, move away, whatever. The reason doesn't matter, they're separating from the district. So in last fiscal year, we had 49 total, 23 of them were teachers, right? That left during that 12-month period of time, and 26 were everything else. And so what does that everything else mean, right? So for example, I had a director of innovation that retired, right? That's a management position. I have a coordinator of, I can't remember what the title was, it's student services.
Wellness coordinator?
Oh, the wellness coordinator, which was a certificate or non-certificated title, coordinator, district coordinator. What was the one that was supposed to do
Program specialist?
community engagement that was in the district office that we actually ended up laying off. And then we had part-time lunch supervisors and new duty supervisors and aides. So everything else was 26 people, but some of them, like a new duty supervisor, might only be an hour and a half a day. And so if we add all of those together, we get almost up to the 50 that we hear about. But it was never 50 teachers. We lost 23 teachers. Now we started over again in July, right? Counting again. And July and August, by the way, are our biggest turnover months because that's when recruiting is happening between districts. So that's when we hired the most people. And that's when, if people were planning on leaving, They probably left, so we can give the count every year, but this year was only 23 teaching positions and 26 everything else.
And is that egregious in comparison to previous years, or is that?
No, that's actually fine. So the average for school districts is anywhere between 15 and 18%, depending upon where it is, and that actually we're under 15%. It doesn't mean that I'm thrilled with it. People need to move on. So the board had to have discussions last year. I'm sure you all remember the number of weddings we accommodated and people moving away to buy houses, and we found other people to fill in, because technically we can make people stay, but when we can accommodate them, we try to accommodate them. And the part that I don't like is I know how hard it is as a system, because we're a small system, to train up new people, right? Like there's a cost and there's an impact to us doing that. But we also want to be as helpful to people in their lives as we can be when we can be. They work for all sorts of different reasons. We also had some retirements last year, and we paid people a bonus to let us know that they planned on leaving. So that actually all helped us with moving pieces, but that doesn't change the total, which was 49. 23 teaching, everything else was management or part-time or some other classified.
And then just my last question. So I know right now we have budgeted in Fund 17, 773,000 for math and science adoption, but I'm assuming that's going to have to probably increase considerably given that we pay 1.2 for ELA. And I know just sitting on the science committee that it's probably going to be more than that. So what's the kind of plan as far as, maybe that will be next year's budget conversation, not this one.
So I can speak to that. So as the point we're at right now with math and science, as we heard tonight from math, we're starting to look at curriculums, and then we start getting ballpark figures. And so then we'll have that conversation as to what that falls a little bit closer to. And so we're in constant communication with the fiscal department so that they're aware of what that number, and we try and get as close to it as we can.
And so then the way that works is we take the money from the unassigned reserve and general fund 1, and we have to move it into 17 to be able to pay for that.
Or you can just take it out.
Or you can pay for it out of 17. So you move it from 17 into fund 1 to pay for it.
So here's the other thing that's implied that I don't think we talk about. This is like a household budget, right? So we just bought, let's use history because it's a small number and I'm good with small numbers. I can get my head around it. It's $400,000. We're supposed to adopt a new history curriculum every 8 years. So we just got one. That's great. The good practice we need to start engaging in is then, okay, 8 years from now, we need another one. Let's say it'll be about $500,000. We should be incrementally every year putting 1/8 of that $500,000 away so that we don't have these big budget swings, so that we have better planning. So in the past, we hadn't done this level of planning to make sure that we were prepared, which is why you see us saying, okay, quick, we need money for ELA and social science. $1.7 million is a lot of money, right? Let's say it's another 1.7 for math and science. We've only got about 770 saved, but you're going to see us start to give you resolutions that say, put 1/8 of that $500,000 a year away and make it a part of the budget, because all of those commitments should be budgeted for incrementally. And that's not Ms. Bonnebert's issue. She's trying to catch up with that we moved everything where it needed to be. That's a district issue. We need to budget better.
Would it be appropriate to have like a board policy?
We will be at some point, as soon as we get the adoption calendar in place, and this is great for us to get an estimate of how much this stuff costs, because we haven't done it in so long. Then we can say to the board, this is what we're going to recommend, so that you don't get hit with it all. Does that make sense? So we will be bringing that forward once we figure it out.
So that's part of the reason larger chunks of money were moved out of the general fund this year in comparison to past years, was to help prepare for these types of things.
The board actually asked me last year, they said it was really confusing to have everything in Fund 1 and with no labels, because we hadn't previously budgeted. So it was literally kept in a spreadsheet in the CEO's office as far as like what things were in there that we never planned for. But that doesn't put it down anywhere for people to look at, right? So
we generally always had the 7% reserve that was
It was actually
required, but it was
higher.
sitting in general.
it was higher. So we had a 3% statutory reserve, and then we had a very complex formula that was about a page long that I shared with the board last year. That formula yielded an additional somewhere between 7 and 11% a year, depending upon different economic and financial factors that you had to track down and measure and then add into the formula. And it was just easier to say, we will do 7%. It was easier for us to calculate, and it's easier for everybody to understand. So it's actually a lower reserve than it used to be.
I'm good. Okay, and then Lisa, do it.
Trustee Starkville answered my questions, and then I also just appreciate the clarification around the 23 teachers. Thank you.
I think all my questions were answered as well, and really appreciate this presentation.
Can I ask a question about, so Chris, you were mentioning the history curriculum is supposed to be new every 8 years?
All of our curricula, there's the frameworks, I think, and Ms. Silversmith is probably gonna tell me I got the wrong number of years. I believe they're all supposed to renew every 8 years. Is that still correct?
Is that
It
a
really
Cal-
hasn't changed.
is
since
that
I
a
went.
California rule or? how is
Every 8 years, they update the framework, so then new curriculum comes out behind it, but you are supposed to replenish it because it becomes old.
Yeah.
With regards to textbooks.
that? Is that like codified, like
So
that's,
it's the expectation that you are doing it, correct? It is, yeah, the best practice.
it is the best practice?
Right. And we're catching up.
Actually, sorry, just one more clarification on, and I know Chief Budget Official Barnhart has, has only been on the job for a little bit, so, and you're gonna be doing an update on the budget for next year. I was just trying to understand, given the previous comments that the budget doesn't incorporate anything that hasn't been approved by the board yet. So in terms of salaries, it shouldn't incorporate a change other than the step and ladder. I was trying to understand, maybe just counterintuitively, and so maybe there's a change in kind of like the staffing level, but it looked like the salaries, just the salaries, not the benefits piece, which is more understandable why it goes up. But the salaries for both certificated and classified instructional salaries was forecast to increase by about 8%, 7.9% next year. I was trying to just better understand that because that strikes me as higher than I would expect from just step and ladder. And I would have thought that newer hires would be lower cost than the retirees. So I'm likely missing something, but I'm just trying to understand intuitively why the non-benefit salary number might be going up at such a high rate without taking into account something beyond step and ladder.
So I think some of that is there were some unfilled positions throughout
Mhm.
the year in 2021, which have now, are either in the process of being filled or have been filled. So at second interim, or if there was an open position, the amount of that person's salary that had not been filled would have been taken out of the budget for if it had been open from December to March. That portion of their salary was then removed. So that would offset some of the costs. People always take, not always, there happens to be leave without pay. People take, and those are not always caught with just doing the updated budget in the increments that we do it throughout the year.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. Got it. So understood. I think that helps to explain. So basically, even though we did a number of reductions, I think a lot of those reductions happened at the district or sort of administrative level rather than on the instructional side, right? So actually, there were instructional positions that previously weren't filled that are filled now. So there actually is a slight change in the staffing relative to last year. Plus, to your point, whether due to COVID or other factors, there was some unpaid leave that was granted or requested that is not assumed to obviously recur until we know. So is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so this is.
Very
an
helpful.
action
Thank you.
item. This is an action item here, so shall we have a motion to approve this on unaudited actuals report? Any comments from the public? Oh, do we have any public comments? No, we did not. Okay, and I think we completed our discussion, correct? Okay,
I move to approve 21.4, 2020-21 fiscal year 21 unaudited actual report. And second?
all in favor? Aye. Great. Okay, so now we're moving on to item 21.5. Again, with
This is an annual item that falls in line with audited actuals, and we are requesting that the board approve resolution 2122-7 for the 2021 actual spent and the 2122 estimated and limit calculations.
Okay, great. Are there any questions? This is something that we. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the resolution 2021-22 gambling.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2021-22-7 gam limit.
Second,
A second.
great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Okay, item 21.6, annual and 5-year developer fee report for 2021-22. Back to you.
Okay. We are requesting that the board approve the annual and 5-year developer fee report for 2021-22. It takes into account actual expenditures of our developer fees for the past 5 years and what we plan to do with the future.
It's just information about it. It's about why. No? Okay, great. All right, so then item 22, 22.1. The discussion on the transition.
So the California Voters' Rights Act asked municipalities and school districts to consider going to what they call by area or by district elections, and to consider that to allow for more representation throughout the community. Maps for that type of area are usually drawn up using every 10-year census data demographically to make sure that communities that are traditionally underrepresented in public elected offices have more of an opportunity to be represented. So this is a lawsuit, for example, that can be brought that the city is dealing with, and they're going to by area elections. We have at this time continued to not get targeted or receive that lawsuit because we continue to be represented on our Board of Education. However, I think it's worth the board discussing whether we begin to ask our community whether there's any interest in the district moving to by area elections rather than our current at large, and to see if there's any input or interest in the community rather than waiting for a time that we might get to and not be represented at all any longer than we've had. So it's up for discussion. I'm happy to at least put out a survey or some sort of instrument together, and interest or input if the board so practice.
Once it moves to that format, are you like married to that? I mean,
Yes.
so if someone from the Eastern Edition doesn't run, what happens?
You try to get them all filled, and then you have a process by which the board can appoint people. Right.
And how does the area break up? Is it by school? Is it by?
It's not. So I've been in 2 districts that we've had to do this, but it was because we were sued to do it. And usually it's done by demographics. So you're obviously in this district, we have 5 trustees, we have far more schools, so it wouldn't be 1 school per district. It's divided up by population spread, right? So for example, there's a greater density of population in one area, and so the district would be smaller, but it's representationally about the same size. So they're all divided up to be roughly the same size, but they are divided by streets to allow perhaps an underrepresented community to have a district where it's a majority.
Who's our community is currently voting on the district?
For the city.
And so it wouldn't be the same for the city and the district?
It could be similar. The problem is that we do have unincorporated areas that we serve as a school district, the city does not. And so the biggest one that I'm aware of, but I'm still a relative newcomer here, is called Burlingame Hills. And that is not part of the city, but is part of our school district. So our maps would have to be different to accommodate those unincorporated areas. But they might be similar. We would have to take a look at that if we ever get to that step of what we do.
And how successful are districts in getting people to run in all their different areas? You said you've been,
This has been so controversial in both districts that I've worked with that have done there. They've gone to these, and it's really fascinating to watch the process. So first of all, they have had no shortage of folks, but they're much larger districts, right? And so in much larger districts, people look at school boards as an opportunity, if they're interested in politics, as their first step into politics, because it is a public service up and elected position. I know that's unusual here because ours is more of like a volunteer oriented board, which is very different because we're a small community. So in those communities, there's been no shortage of candidates. And the other interesting thing for me to see going through that process is it has definitely impacted in a positive way the diversity of those boards, which demonstrated pretty quickly and directly that there are some districts that need that help because they aren't represented on their own.
Is the Cemetery Unified High School District in the district? They're going through it now.
They're doing it now, yeah. So everybody's been waiting for the last census data because it'll be the latest data. So if you do by area elections, you have to revise your districts every 10 years with census data.
So in my opinion, I would say that if this is coming to all districts eventually, we might as well solicit community input. I guess.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see what the community actually thinks. But I mean, as a member of the community, I would say that I understand the spirit of the law and why, someone goes around suing places to they can do it, because in other areas where there's a higher concentration of a particular demographic, needing representation makes complete sense. They're so small, and I can't think of an area in all of Burlingame that I would say X type of people live there. I mean, it's just, we're all just evenly sprinkled around, and so even though I think this is they're trying to do a one size fits all with this law, I do just guess that one day we'll get that better. We'll have to do the process anyway, so we may as well get ahead of it.
So I think the direction.
I would just say, sorry.
Yeah, Deepak?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree that I think it would be helpful to gather some further community input. I think that if it appears that there's a significant problem with respect to their representation, then this would make more sense. If that doesn't appear to be the case, then in the latter scenario, I would lean towards retaining the status quo because, I mean, in theory, the onus should be on the community and the voters to ensure that we put in place an appropriately diverse and qualified and committed board. And I would rather have more qualified and more committed members of the board, even if they come from duplicative areas, than to force the issue by having people be appointed from areas if they weren't already interested. But if it's a huge issue where people would otherwise participate, but they are somehow, being thwarted by the existing system, then this would seem to be more attractive. But particularly given, for example, the last election cycle where we didn't have that issue, and probably not in the last several election cycles, it didn't appear to be the case that a particular representative or community member wanted to be involved and was somehow, turned back because of excessive representation from another area. So, I don't know, because I haven't gathered the input from the community, so I think that'd be helpful to sort of get a better idea in case we're missing, some hidden issue there. So yeah, I agree with kind of trying to get more information.
Yeah, if you have direction, you go ahead.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
solicit information from the community and see what they.
And I will say that probably our problem is finding enough people that are willing to serve on the board. And since we are volunteering, it's a lot of work. And so if anybody is interested, please talk to one of your trustees because
Maybe
Because
add that as a question.
I was gonna
in
say.
your survey.
Because I think our issue is more like, would anybody please volunteer? And we've always had a lot of success in the past, evidently getting volunteers, but community, if any of you are listening to this and saying, gosh, I would like to do that. You have 5 trustees in the community. Please feel free to talk to them about how much fun and how much work it is. And they will put the best positive spin they can. Great, thank you. And I will put out some sort of questionnaire sometime in the fall.
Great, thank you. We're very interested in that. Okay, so now we're moving into our HR section of the agenda. Come on, guys. Okay, approval of CBEST waivers for substitute teachers.
Yes, good evening, board. As you all are aware, we are in desperate need of a high demand of substitute teachers. So I bring forth tonight a CBEST waiver. This waiver will allow me to hire substitutes that have yet to meet the basic skills requirement. Basic skills is also referred to as a CBEST. So this waiver will allow me to hire teachers that have their bachelor's degrees and qualify for a substitute permit besides having the CBEST. So I report this action item for you to vote on.
Yes, may I just say to anyone that's watching, which probably is no one, but the CBEST is a test.
Oh my God.
Yes, the CBEST is a test that teachers are required to take to obtain their credential. There have been new guidance where we are allowed to take course credit to justify the CBEST. However, there are still some that don't quite qualify even based on that by missing like one literature class. So the CBEST waiver will just allow.
It stands for California Basic Educational Skills Test.
This waiver will just allow me to go ahead and proceed with the permit.
Whatever makes it easier.
Yes.
Anything we can do to make it easier.
All right, do we have any other questions for Ms. Bell?
They still have to go through the standard background check to make sure.
Of course,
I
yes.
just want to make that.
Yes.
clear.
So substitute teachers go through 2 background checks. They go through one through the district, and then they also go through the CTC, which is the California Teaching Commission. So they have to pass that one, which is definitely a very thorough background check.
All right, I make a motion.
The only question I have would be, Allison, if you can just clarify, are there a number of substitute candidates who have taken the CBEST that tend to be available?
So that have taken the CBEST, no, we don't have quite a lot. We're fortunate to live in a district where we have a lot of parents that are able to work from home and have a couple of days that they can donate to the school to be able to sub. But they have degrees in business and things like that that don't require them to take a CBEST. So this will allow them to maybe sub 1 day a week in the classroom.
Great. Sounds great. I'm happy to make a motion to approve unless there are other questions.
Okay, great. Deepak, we have a second.
I second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Excellent, thank you. And now we're on to our item number 24, public statements related to non-agenda topics. All right, so we have one.
Hello. Hello, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak here tonight. I want to address the Burlingame trustees, school trustees, and school leadership. My name is Amy Sugamar, and listening in tonight to a thoughtful discussion of all the business at hand. It's clear all of you who are entrusted with leading the community care deeply about the children attending our Burlingame schools. Most of us are by now aware of a recent case incident in our community, as many of us have heard directly from our neighbor, a Washington elementary school mother, who shared her family's pain in describing how her biracial teenage daughter was called the N-word by middle school boys and then was gaslit by their parents. That this is happening in our community is no surprise, as documented by a 2019-2020 San Mateo County Civil Grand Jury report. As a member of a multicultural and mixed-race family,
I know from personal experience that this is an ongoing problem in our Burlingame schools. And what makes this particular situation unique is that the family has spoken publicly about it. Many concerned Burlingame parents convened a meeting this weekend to discuss what happened with this young girl. While we recognize the board's resolutions and we appreciate the Superintendent Silversmith's Jedi program, we want to know, what is our school district doing in response to this incident? And what is the plan moving forward to ensure that it doesn't happen again? As a piece, and we just want to, we look forward to hearing from you on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so we will move on now to the board requested items, and we have three on the agenda still, the facility reading protocol, and discussion on ways to include students in our board work, and discussion on the Roosevelt Bell schedule, and they're all scheduled out into the future. Do we have any more that we want to? No?
Are we reading all of these on there?
Oh, do we want to adjust?
No, I've already scheduled them.
Okay, yeah.
I hope we're leaving them on. I've started scheduling, unless you'd like to take them off and have a shorter meeting with it, that's fine. too. So that's completely up to the trustees.
Is it possible, I don't know if this is the right form, but for Marla, just based on what we just heard, is there an opportunity to include in here just a little bit more information in a future meeting about some of the things that we're doing to support students that need support? Biracial students and yeah, anti-hate. I know we have signs and I know there have been a lot of things that you and your team have done about it, but just kind of with your next Jedi report, including a little bit more information or finding out a little bit more about what we just heard about.
So we already know what we just heard about, and the school district's already participated, and I even received an email from the parents thanking us for what we've done. But we don't necessarily make those things public because they're specific to individual circumstances and situations. I think if the board wants to discuss how they would like to respond to the comment, that's the board's choice, but I don't know that we would talk about individual families and students.
And I mean, I think the Jedi, there's a lot of good information that comes out of the Jedi reports every month. And I know that a lot of times there is just conversations around these topics. So
Do you mean like in having a specific Jedi report about anti-racism and the practices that are in place in our schools? Maybe
What
some
we
of the
currently do.
what we currently
yes,
do,
exactly. Sorry.
literature programs around that. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely, we can report on that. And I think there are a combination of things, because there are sort of proactive programs and then there are reactive programs when things happen. So in the past, you know, like our old principal FBIS, Scott would bring in, you know, an organization that's very specifically knowledgeable about, you know, a certain topic in reaction to maybe something that's happening.
So, but the goal of a district, I believe, is to incorporate these things in the classrooms that we raise children that are more aware. I think, and one of the things that maybe wasn't clear, they weren't armed with children. But that doesn't mean they can't be tomorrow. That they're doing those things. So there's actually middle school children that engage in the behavior, but that doesn't mean it won't be Burlingame middle school children next time, right? So the goal of a school and our role to play is to provide education to our children so that they are more aware and that they are more able to navigate those situations in ways that we want them to, which are positive and productive and based off that first of all, they don't use hate language or hate speech, and that if they are seeing it, that they intervene in an appropriate and safe way. That's really where the school district's role lies. And then if something does happen, which, you know, these are not unusual things, it's just, I think what the speaker pointed out that was helpful was that it was just something that the parents actually discussed openly. That is unusual. Usually they will reach out to us privately and we'll help them deal with it with counseling or with support of the school, and we'll help the children. And that happened in this case as well. But they also spoke about it publicly and actually asked the parents to take responsibility, which is how we know the children are. Because that school's principal took responsibility in our neighborhood district. So, but that doesn't mean it won't be our kids next time. It was our kids that
For the recipient.
were the victims in
Right.
this case. But it doesn't mean that maybe our kids won't be the ones instigating next time, right? So this is why we have to really talk about these things in a very forthright manner in schools and in classrooms. I think that's the part that's our goal, right? What are we doing? We need to make sure that those things are going on in our classrooms and integrated into our curriculum.
And I know you're working on it. I think that's the main thing. It's just
We
making
talk about
sure
it
that
all the
we
time.
are publicly addressing it and having those conversations.
Should I read somewhere that we're doing some work around being an upstander? Is that right?
That was in Marla's last.
It was in your newsletter?
Wasn't it from you? I believe that was one of your sentences. Sorry, I couldn't remember everything I read. I
Yes,
forgot.
so in Burlingame, we're moving from being bystanders to upstanders and really looking at how to support them at a young age and giving students voice. When you see something, say something.
Thank you.
And no matter what the kind of discussion is uncomfortable, the more often that the children and the adults talk about it, the less weird it is. And that's what you said.
But yeah, to your point, I feel like the Jedi group has done so much work around this, but it would be great to highlight some of the work, the amazing book list, we have the upstander work that we're doing. So
Yeah, and I think, Marla has done a great job with that, and, we have a lot more work to do, right? We're working on it institutionally, we've been trying to diversify our staff. We've been providing places for people to have these conversations. Marla's been getting all the literature with the teachers in the classrooms and integrating it into our curriculum much more. But it's still being able to have those conversations, and I think what Trustee Wong just said is the most important thing. They're difficult conversations to have because it makes people really uncomfortable. But that discomfort is sort of necessary for us to show our kids that this is how we want them to be.
it's less uncomfortable for kids, right?
It
They
is
don't
actually.
have the
You're-
social norms around
you're
stuff that
right.
we do, and so it's great to have these conversations really early on because it just enables a level of comfort.
Yeah, and then there's we also have to look at our institutional stuff. So, right, like last year at our SARCs reports, even though the SARCs are always, what do we say, they're 2 years behind, it still should be better and better as far as equity and equitability across the district. That's the kind of stuff we need to keep an eye on. That's important. There's always lots more to discuss. Sorry, I know we got
So I don't think that's.
further chatting than maybe we wanted to, but there we go.
That's an important topic.
Is it?
So I don't think that's something that adds to the board of trustees.
No, I
That's
guess not.
more to.
Be a part of a Jedi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just part of it, yeah.
We have incorporated Jedi reports into every board meeting as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I think we have no more board items, and do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
A second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
808.
Aye.
Oh, sorry.
Take care, everyone.
Goodbye.
Aye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Travel safe.
Thanks, Val.